What's happening, team? It's Liam from Lazarus Personal Training, and this is After Dark, where I review AEW Dark and talk about an element and how we as wrestlers may look to improve on ourselves by watching the guys and girls on AEW Dark. So, a couple of updates from my end. Last week, I didn't have an AEW After Dark because there was an incident with Ten and Jack Evans where Ten had his mouth bust open, so then it meant that he got pulled from YouTube. So my usual time to review Dark wasn't there, and I just didn't have time to do it because I've got a ton of stuff going on in my life. If you've seen other videos, you'll know that we're doing Pursuit Pro Wrestling, and we're putting all the groundwork in really to make sure that's up and ready to go by whenever the government allows us to do stuff. So I've been super hectic, hence the different position. This is my front room rather than being right upstairs, literally because I had just all my stuff down here, and I went, I can only do this now, and to get all the other bits, my tripod's in my car. So anyway, that's enough waffle from me. Today I am looking at the art of selling and how we as wrestlers might want to think about how we sell throughout the match, but also if you're just a fan of wrestling, why it might be that you are drawn to one wrestler rather than another wrestler, or the common debate on the internet at the moment that nobody sells anything and nothing means anything. I think the first point of call when it comes to selling is the undervaluing of certain moments. For whatever reason in AEW, moves to the outside seem to mean less than they do, or they seem to mean less than they should do. The biggest examples of that were in the Dante Martin and Jack Evans match. There was a huge back suplex from the inside to the outside ramp, and then it was just forgotten about, and that was massive. That was a huge moment. That's a big bump that Jack Evans took for it just to be another moment in the match. They also did a Canadian Destroyer on the outside, which really, when it comes to it, that should have been something that is a career ender, like a pile driver to the outside. And yes, it went into the finish of the match, but it means so much more than that. And I think we need to be careful how we utilize things, because the ring is the ring, but then outside of the ring is a completely different environment, and people know how it feels to fall over. So to get dropped from a massive height onto your back to then just carry on and act like it didn't happen is just stupid, really. Another moment where this happens is in QT Marshall and Sean Dean. QT gives Sean Dean a clothesline on the outside, and again, it's just a clothesline, it's just a bump, but the fact that it's on the outside, I felt like should have been emphasized more. There should have been a bigger moment around that. I'm not saying that every bump on the outside has to have like a near 10 count where there's the referee on the inside doing the count and then they just get into the ring, but you know, it's painful. Like, don't undervalue it, because then you just have to do things that are more painful in the long run. To not be complete doom and gloom, a couple of people that I thought that had really good selling. This is not someone that I usually big up, but Brandon Cutler's selling against Brian Cage was excellent. It's exactly what it needed to be, and I enjoyed watching him sell. There was a desperation to the way that he moved around. Things felt like they had an importance, and for me, that is what the art of selling is all about. Fuego del Sol also did a really good job on selling against JD Drake, and again, it's something that I think Fuego has had built into him, that he needs to sell because he's a smaller guy, but it's believable. I can look at Fuego selling and go, okay, I feel like he's taken this stuff, I feel like he has been damaged. So again, Fuego was another example of someone that was hitting some desperation selling and actually looked decent in it. There were only two moments that I recall seeing where someone actually fought back in a match while they were getting beat up, and that was Fuego and then Dante Martin as well, or Dante Martins, sorry, where just firing a shot back in again just gives you some life and doesn't mean that you're completely dead on the floor. It's an old Ricky Steamboat thought where for every 2 or 3 punches that you take, you give one back, so you look like you are in a fight and you look like that you're not just dead. I also like Chaos Theory, and I like the way that their two selling styles are completely different. So Pentacore is used as a battering ram and sells that very well, and I actually quite like it. I also think though that it plays a fine line when he's selling for his tag team partners moves that he is being used to do, and more the when he actually takes moves. So that's a level thing, but that's a really minute element to it. And then Luther sells completely different to him in sort of like a staggered zombie sort of sell. And I like the contrast between those two. I'm probably one of the only people that really like Chaos Theory, but I really like them. And then yet more people that I haven't liked and I'm growing to like. At the beginning of the Gun Club versus the trio that they're wrestling, Austin Gunn and Damian Priest. Have I got that name right? Damian Priest. Adam Priest is in WWE. Austin Gunn and Damian Priest have a really, really nice exchange at the beginning that felt like it meant something on every hold, and then when they got out of the ring, they were both feeling the effects of it. So credit to both of those. I love Damian Priest. I think he moves well. I think he looks good. I think he's got like that old school like Dynamite Kid sort of vibe to him that me as a wrestling fan is really drawn towards. So I would like to see more out of Damian Priest. I do think that it's a fine line between what is good selling and what is overselling, but you can see it within the wrestlers and you can see it within the matches. For me, John Skyler did a really, really good job of selling for Cesar Bononi throughout the match, and it felt like everything meant something, where there was a number of matches where they went through the match was fine itself, it just didn't have any weight to it. And you might find that you watch a match and you go through it and you go, okay, that happened. And I do think that a lot of that comes into the selling and making things mean something. And when things mean something, they're more likely to last within your head. And I think, as all of us are probably guilty of as wrestlers, we just think moves. So for example, Alex Garcia and, she was new and I liked her gimmick, Ashley Vox had this match. It was quite back and forth, it was quite quick. What I went away with from that match was that Alex Vox picked up the win. She does a fish hook, and that's pretty much the basis of all her gimmick. And that was pretty much the only thing that she went to. Whereas for Alex Garcia, she did quite a lot of moves, but because there was no weight to the moves, because the selling of the moves was lacking, because she went from one move to another move to another move, I went away remembering the fish hook, because that's what finished the match. That was what there was attention to, and Alex Garcia had to sell that she was getting out of the fish hook. So again, when we're thinking what is the best thing to do, yeah, moves are important, but actually the weight of the moves, I would say, is more important. Do we remember a stunner, for example, because it's a cool move, or do we remember the stunner because it's a finisher and it is sold correctly and it is sold like it's a finisher? And I think this is the argument for when it comes to a super kick, for example, is that back in the day, HBK hitting a super kick, it was a finish and it had that weight behind it. And I think a lot of people complain about this now because the weight has been removed, but they still acknowledge that it probably should be a finish, or it has been a finish. So therefore, when it isn't given the correct weight, we have a disconnection within our mind. It goes back to what I was saying earlier on about the bumps on the outside. For me, if you're landing on the outside, that has a lot of weight behind it. So when that weight isn't portrayed back into a wrestling ring, I have a disconnect between it. And then when we have disconnects, that's when we have to worry that actually we're going to lose the audience, because we aren't following the continuation that they need to follow to justify, I'm going to invest in this match. Even though I know that it's not real, I'm going to invest in this match. And when we begin to slap them in the face and say, well, it's not really real, then we lose the wrestling fans. And really, that's the most important part about this. To finish off with just a couple of thoughts again from me on this Dark. Did anybody else feel like this Dark was backwards? Like, it started out with some pretty heavy hitting matches, some like mainstay names, and then towards the back end of the show, I was like, oh, this must be the main event. Oh, hang on a minute, no, there's another match. Oh, hang on a minute, there's another match. And it felt like it was completely backwards. I don't know whether that's something that whoever is producing AEW Dark is doing because people weren't sticking around to the main, so they thought, oh, we'll put the main event talent on first. It just seemed like an odd way to run a show, but this is a free show on YouTube, so there probably is a reason behind not going towards a traditional formula. I also felt like this was a good amount of time for a Dark. It wasn't too long. It didn't feel like it was dragging through. I got through this in one sitting and was quite happy with it. Could it have done with a couple less matches on it? Yeah, probably. But overall, an hour and a half show pretty much flew by, far more than the 2.5 hour ones have done previously. So I think now the AEW have Dark Elevation. I don't really understand the naming structure out of this, but now that they have Dark Elevation, Dark and Dynamite, I'm hoping that the runtime of Dark stays pretty tight, so then I don't have to spend all day watching it. No, but so I can stay invested and keep moving on. I don't lose interest in it. And then finally, AEW seem to be on a weird run at the moment of breaking up tag teams. So we've got QT Marshall, who seems to be distancing himself from the natural nightmares of the Nightmare Family Factory Collective umbrella. The Nightmare Umbrella, that's what I'm going to start calling him. So you've got QT Marshall leaving the Nightmare Umbrella. They seem to be implying that Joey Janela and Sonny Kiss had a bit of a disconnect at some point. Brian Cage seems to be on his way out of Team Taz. Maybe we're looking at a whole new division of tag team wrestling coming into AEW. I think one of the things that they have to be careful of is that they don't just run the same storyline 3 times through, or else nobody gets the benefit out of it. But we'll see. I have faith that they're going to move in the right direction. And that is it for After Dark this week. What did you think of Dark this week? Do you agree with me on the selling points? Is it something that you've ever thought about? Do we need to think about that stuff, or do we just go through a match? And if the match is good, the match is good. Let me know in the comments down below. Again, weird setup. We will see what ends up happening with my setup as time goes on. Being completely honest, I really don't know at this moment in time. But anyway, hope you have a great week, and I will see you. Oh, before I get into that, if you like this video, give it a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. I've been Liam from Lazarus Personal Training, and I will see you hopefully next time.